Hi guys, Monday morning, November 10th. Okay, so we talked about this yesterday. I just decided to make a video to summarize what we already know. So the 1 year SNAP, ACA, other programs, uh, the 8 Democrats got scammed, okay? This is the graphic right here. 8 Democrats who voted yes justified. It's claiming 1 year SNAP extension, 1 year protection for other programs, for VA, military, back pay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And they also admitted that there's going to be a continuing resolution in January, which basically means that it cancels all this out. So you can't agree to a 1 year thing when this cancels in January with another continuing resolution. And more importantly, and that's if the House and Taco approve it, which they're not going to. The astrology shows that. And so let's just go through it. There's a lot of noise here, and more importantly, we have a Mercury retrograde. You can't enter into a deal during Mercury retrograde. Yesterday was the first day. These clowns decided to sign it or vote on it on Mercury retrograde. So what do you think is going to happen? So this is part and parcel of what I've been saying to you guys. Don't enter into any agreements or contracts, especially very important ones like this one, on a Mercury retrograde. It was day one, and guess what they did on day one? They basically defied Mercury, and we will see the result of how it works, where it is not going to be moving forward, and the government will most likely stay shut, which is not what they want. You don't get these things if the government is shut, right? So that's what we're going to see. All right, let's just go through it.
Fake promises, 1 year SNAP/ACA/other programs. The core of the scam. The 8 Senate Democrats who voted yes justified it by claiming white heavy checkmark 1 year SNAP extension, white heavy checkmark 1 year ACA stabilization, white heavy checkmark 1 year protection for other programs. But this was never real because they themselves admitted there will be another continuing resolution, CR, in January. Once a January CR happens, white heavy checkmark, also called 1 year, promises are automatically canceled. White heavy checkmark duration is erased. White heavy checkmark Congress must renegotiate everything from scratch. White heavy checkmark stability vanishes. White heavy checkmark keyline. A continuing resolution will have to occur again in January, automatically canceling any so-called 1 year agreements and forcing Congress to redo the entire negotiation from scratch. Meaning, heavy checkmark, they knowingly voted for an illusion. Heavy checkmark, they admitted the deal wouldn't last a year. Heavy checkmark, they acted with zero leverage. There is no scenario where ACA reforms are implemented. SNAP is funded for a year. Other social programs receive guarantees. Especially while right arrow Republicans control the House. Right arrow Mike Johnson refuses to convene the chamber. Right arrow Trump directs continued shutdown. The promises were dead the moment they were spoken. These 8 Democrats voted for terms already invalid. White heavy checkmark, they voted for self-interest, not national interest. These 8 acted for local messaging, personal political safety, ego positioning, not for national interest, democratic strategy, public welfare. They behaved like small local politicians when the moment required national leadership. This was not courage. It was parochial self-preservation. White heavy checkmark, they ignored Tuesday's signal. The nation spoke. On Tuesday, voters delivered a clear message. Support structural reform plus transparency. A symbol of that, white heavy checkmark Prop 50 passed in California. Despite being a state measure, it represented white heavy checkmark a national mandate, white heavy checkmark a demand for accountability and institutional change. Prop 50 equals for America, not just for California. Yet the 8 Democrats ignored Tuesday's message and voted on Sunday as if nothing had changed. They disregarded the national mood, the reform movement, the urgency of the moment. Instead, they reverted to small interest, state-level self-protection. Exactly what Mercury retrograde amplifies. Poor judgment. Misreading the moment. Narrow thinking. Their vote worked. Crossmark against the national mood, crossmark against reform momentum. White heavy checkmark Tuesday versus Sunday scorecard. Category. Tuesday election. Sunday Senate vote. Public awareness. White heavy checkmark high. Crossmark ignored. Accountability. White heavy checkmark demanded. Crossmark rejected. Prop 50. White heavy checkmark national interest. Crossmark overlooked. Dem unity. White heavy checkmark strong. Crossmark fractured. Leadership. White heavy checkmark public led. Crossmark self-interest. Voter clarity. White heavy checkmark not conned. Crossmark Dem senators conned. Strategy. White heavy checkmark coherent. Crossmark illogical. Reform energy. White heavy checkmark rising. Crossmark undermined. GOP manipulation. White heavy checkmark rejected. White heavy checkmark enabled. National interest. White heavy checkmark upheld. Crossmark betrayed. White heavy checkmark bottom line. On Tuesday, the American people and Democrats were not conned. On Sunday, 8 Senate Democrats were conned badly. White heavy checkmark Mercury Retrograde signature. 8 senators acting from ego, not alignment. Mercury RX, November 7th to 29th, 2025, produces misjudgment, bad deals, short-sighted thinking, false progress, fixing things badly, illusions. These 8 embodied every one of those traits. Instead of leaning into national energy, supporting transformation, they acted from white heavy checkmark fear, white heavy checkmark self-preservation, white heavy checkmark local incentives, white heavy checkmark personal politics. I think I'm making progress, but I'm actually sabotaging myself and others. They became instruments of karmic exposure, not leadership. White heavy checkmark why their vote was so damaging. These 8 ignored. National priorities. Democratic strategy. Public signals. Prop 50 mandate. SNAP crisis. ACA vulnerability. House refusal to convene. Trump/Johnson sabotage. 218 plus Epstein subpoena risk. January CR reset fact. They voted. Crossmark against national interest, crossmark against democratic interest, crossmark against America's economic reality. All 4. Right arrow local messaging, right arrow self-image, right arrow personal positioning, right arrow see? I tried excuses. Small souls making small decisions in a big moment. White heavy checkmark Prop 50 versus the 8 Democrats. National interest versus local EGO. Prop 50 equals white heavy checkmark structural white heavy checkmark national white heavy checkmark pro accountability white heavy checkmark democracy reinforcing. These 8 equals crossmark parochial crossmark reactive crossmark self-interested crossmark anti-mandate. Prop 50 showed what the country wanted. These 8 refused to hear it. They failed the moment. White heavy checkmark why the January CR exposes the scam. They admitted. There will be a January CR, which means white heavy checkmark all 1-year promises void white heavy checkmark must renegotiate white heavy checkmark no continuity white heavy checkmark no relief. Therefore their vote was crossmark strategically indefensible crossmark substantively worthless crossmark politically foolish. They voted for an illusion. White heavy checkmark quick logic snapshot. GOP claimed 1-year extensions. Dems voted yes. Dems admitted Jan CR is guaranteed. Jan CR wipes everything. Therefore, 1-year promises are fake. Period. White heavy checkmark why the 8 were conned. They voted yes because they wanted to look responsible, thought GOP would negotiate, believed 1-year claims. But the January CR destroys all of it. They voted for a mirage. White heavy checkmark no binding agreements, no value. There was crossmark no Johnson commitment, crossmark no Trump commitment, crossmark no House vote scheduled, crossmark no enforcement, crossmark no bipartisan structure. They traded their votes for vapors. Republicans can now say, we negotiated, House refused. Without giving Democrats anything. They got played. White heavy checkmark, the market plus public were fooled. Headline: Senate votes to reopen government. Reality: House will not take it up. Johnson wants shut down. Trump wants shut down. AZ-08 will not be seated. 218 will not be reached. No subpoenas, Epstein stays sealed. Markets reacted to. Headline: illusion, not reality. When truth hits, snap chaos continues, ACA remains sabotaged, markets wobble, confidence falls. Textbook Mercury RX delusion. White heavy checkmark, shutdown is intentional. For Trump plus Johnson, shutdown is a strategy. White heavy checkmark, block 218, white heavy checkmark, block AZ-08, white heavy checkmark, block subpoenas, white heavy checkmark, block Epstein exposure, white heavy checkmark, starve snap, white heavy checkmark, cripple ACA, white heavy checkmark, cause suffering, blame Democrats, white heavy checkmark, create chaos. Only Trump can fix it. The 8 yes votes changed nothing, but helped the GOP narrative. White heavy checkmark, even if the House did vote, nothing changes. Even in the unlikely event that Johnson calls House members back, the House votes, Trump signs, we still end up here. White heavy checkmark, January CR void, white heavy checkmark, snap shut down again, white heavy checkmark, ACA crisis explodes on January 1st, 26. Meaning, even the best case scenario is just a 6-week loop back to failure. So the 8 Democrats voted for nothing. The illusion of relief, no relief. White heavy checkmark, Schumer is out. Schumer, misread the moment. Failed to protect his caucus. Allowed Democrats to be manipulated. Enabled a symbolic vote that strengthened the GOP. Lost strategic authority. Schumer is effectively finished heading into 2026. White heavy checkmark, the bigger astrology / 2026 frame. These 8 votes document Democratic good faith, reveal Republican sabotage, create evidence for 2026 accountability. Their vote is not the solution, the evidence. 2026 astrology. Saturn, Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. Pluto in Aquarius. Exposure, institutional collapse, reset. The system cannot be reformed, it must be rebuilt. These 8 help demonstrate why. White heavy checkmark, final one-line summary. The 8 Democrats voted from self-interest, ignored Tuesday's Prop 50 national mandate, and accepted fake 1-year promises that will be voided by a January CR. With Johnson refusing to reconvene the House and Trump intent on continued shutdown to block 218 and Epstein subpoenas, their vote accomplished nothing, and even if passed and signed, January returns us to shutdown with snap cut again and ACA exploding on January 1st, 26. Textbook Mercury Retrograde folly, confirming Schumer is finished and the system is heading toward its 2026 reset.
There you go, guys. That's what it is in summary. Okay. So best case scenario, we do have the House voting for it and Taco signing it. That's the best case scenario. So that will be paid for November, partial or fully, and then not for December in January. And then we're back at the shutdown, and SNAP will be shut off again. And now we also have ACA premiums skyrocketing and the subsidies shut off. Okay, because it's going to be another shutdown. Okay, and it's not going to last one year. All right, so there you go. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is what we said, is that these 8 got fooled by these fake promises, and they're not going to get anything because Mikey Johnson is not going to convene the House, and even if he does, they're not going to have the votes, and Taco's not going to want to reopen the government. So my point is, if Taco does not reopen the government, okay, through a signed bill, then these promises that they got, these 8 Democratic senators got, is nothing. They got nothing, okay? So they either got nothing, or they only got something for 6 weeks or so until the continuing resolution starts up again. 6 weeks is not 1 year, okay? That's it.